Hi everyone, welcome back to Hell. Today we'll be talking about an old friend of the channel. Puppets. If you've been following the channel for a while now, you probably know that I have a bit of a relationship with puppet shows. For better or worse. Some of my first videos here were about Peppermint Park, an absolute nightmare of a puppet show that featured these freaks of nature. And last year I talked about the sci-fi oddity that was Terrahawks, which I honestly would like to talk about again at some point because man, I was not very nice at that show. Get it? Sister? I f***ing hate this show. But for all that I've talked about these kinds of shows, I've realized I've never talked about why I'm so interested in them in the first place. And surprisingly, it's not because I'm a masochist. No, it's instead because I have a great love and appreciation for what is likely the greatest puppet franchise of them all. And that is, of course, the Muppets. Whether it was Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, Sex and Violence, or the Muppet Show itself, every show that Jim Henson was a part of had a level of magic that nothing else could reproduce. Characters like Kermit, Elmo, Gonzo, and others don't just feel like puppeted characters. They feel like real people that blended perfectly with the rest of the world. Movies like The Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan, and The Muppets Christmas Carol were integral to my childhood, and I couldn't imagine who or where I'd be today without them. And yes, Muppets Sex and Violence is a real Muppet show. I couldn't believe that either. And as I've gotten older and my respect for the franchise has grown, Jim Henson has become one of my personal heroes because of his creative vision and how he was able to spark joy in so many people. And even after his sudden passing, the Muppets continued to persist with several films and shows before being acquired by Disney in 2004. But what happened after Disney acquired them? The Muppets mostly lay dormant aside from TV appearances, music parodies, and Disney World attractions, but that all changed once The Muppets released in 2011. The film became a massive success and brought the Muppets back to prominence, but as more Muppet projects released over the coming years, that success seemed to diminish each time. Most discussions surrounding the Muppets nowadays center around the Henson years, which of course makes sense, but when it comes to the Muppet projects under the Disney umbrella, it seems like most people either forget about them or don't care enough to discuss them. So today, in belated honor of the 70th anniversary of the Muppets, I'll be watching and reviewing every single Muppet movie and show released by Disney to see if they've treated the franchise well. And just for the record, since I have 4 movies and 3 seasons of different shows to get through today, my thoughts on each project will be fairly brief and straight to the point. And also, minor spoilers ahead, if that wasn't obvious. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and start with the 2011 Muppets film. What the hell is that? While the Muppet revival really began in 2011, the first Muppet project under the Disney umbrella would be the Muppets Wizard of Oz from 2005. This made-for-TV film is pretty much what the title states, a retelling of the Wizard of Oz with Muppets playing most of the characters. And while the concept of the film is pretty simple, the movie itself is surprisingly strange. First off, the movie begins with a random music video from R&B singer Ashanti, who plays Dorothy in this film. Then we find out that Toto is a instead of a dog. And once they enter the land of Oz, the story randomly gets horny. Pepe, as Toto, calls himself sexy throughout the film and then randomly tries to come on to Dorothy near the end. And once they meet the wizard and Gonzo as Tin Man asks for his wish, the wizard randomly tries to seduce him by turning into a CGI chicken lady. I'm starting to wonder why this wasn't the movie called Sex and Violence. And then in the middle of a fight scene, we get a random cameo from Quentin Tarantino where he crawls across the table while pitching to Kermit a big, busty vampire vixen to appear in the fight scene. It's original, but aside from the sheer insanity that the film pulls out at the most random and inappropriate times, the movie is a pretty bland affair overall. It's surprisingly boring for a Muppet movie, with many scenes where you could tell they were just stretching for time. Ashanti isn't terrible in this movie either, but she didn't mix well with the Muppets and just felt like a secondary character most of the time. And while I can forgive some pitfalls in the story for how it needed to fit into a TV schedule, this movie also kind of looks like shit. I know this was a made-for-TV film and all, but this movie looks like a YouTube upload from 2007. The lighting isn't great, the audio felt off at points, and don't even remind me of the terrible CGI during the wizard scenes. So yeah, Muppets Wizard of Oz is not a movie I recommend watching at all, but since it was never a high-end production to begin with, I think it's fine for what it is. Also, I know he had retired by this point, but how the hell did the Muppets do a Wizard of Oz parody and not have Frank Oz play the wizard? The story writes itself, people! Alright, anyway, back to 2011. The first real notable Muppet project to come from Disney was, of course, The Muppets, which released in theaters in late 2011. And as you can probably tell by the bare title, this film was made as a reintroduction for the Muppets while also celebrating the entire franchise up to this point. I still have fond memories of my first time watching this film, because when my dad and I first saw it, we were the only ones in the entire theater. We also didn't live in a very nice town. It was terrifying. Imagine getting shanked because you wanted to watch the Muppet movie. But upon rewatching this film in the comfort of my home all these years later, I was honestly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. The film centers around Walter, a Muppet living in a small town literally named Small Town, alongside his brother Gary, played by Jason Segel, and his girlfriend Mary, played by Amy Adams. Oh god, what the f- They all visit Los Angeles to celebrate the couple's anniversary, and stop at the Muppet Studios for Walter. Which reminds me, this video is sponsored by Breaking and Entering. Don't have access to Kermit's office on a tour of the studio? Break into that joint. Find out that an evil oil baron is trying to destroy the Muppet Studios? Break into Kermit's house. He won't mind. That probably wasn't a great sponsor to take in hindsight. After finding out the studios are in danger, Kermit and the gang row the Muppets back together to stop the oil baron. Then, after restoring the theater, securing a TV deal, and kidnapping Jack Black, the Muppets put on a telethon to raise money to buy back the studios. And while the story here is pretty straightforward for a comeback film, the Muppets still managed to turn the story into something that's uniquely the Muppets. Your typical Muppet zaniness flows through every facet of this film, and pretty much every character felt true to their original form. And while centering around Walter instead of the Muppets themselves was an interesting choice, I think introducing a new character was a great way to bring the Muppets to a new audience while also reintroducing them to older ones. And coming from someone who doesn't enjoy musicals all that much, I really enjoyed most of the original songs throughout this movie. Life's a Happy Song was a fun way to open things, if not a little dystopian. Pictures in My Head was easily the most beautiful here, and Manor Muppet was both funny and a really cathartic moment for Walter and Gary's character arcs. And speaking of Walter, to my surprise, my favorite thing about this entire movie was watching him develop as a character. Watching him go from being awkward and failing to fit in, to meeting and getting along with his heroes, to finally discovering his talent and being accepted as a Muppet was really beautiful to see. I think we all see a little bit of ourselves in a character like Walter, and once I got invested in his story, he quickly became my favorite character in a sea of already fantastic Muppets. But for as much as I enjoy this movie, it definitely has its share of flaws. Small complaints first, but the licensed songs used during the montage and transitions felt really out of place here. I know this isn't the first Muppet movie to use licensed songs, but when your film is filled with plenty of great original songs, these just felt like a cheap way to pop the audience. The subplot with Mary and Gary's relationship troubles also wasn't that interesting, and could have benefited from more build-up throughout the film. And the villain also barely had any scenes in this film and didn't have much time to develop his character, other than his maniacal laugh.
Maniacal laugh.
That Cars 2 billboard is also an abomination. But other than that, I really enjoyed this movie and would even say it's one of my favorite Muppet movies in general. It may not benefit from the same charm as the original Muppet movies, but for being a modern movie with a reboot story, it's about as great as it can possibly be, and I highly recommend it. And I definitely wasn't the only one who felt this way, as the movie did stupidly well at the box office and was mostly loved by fans and critics. This inevitably led to a sequel, Muppets Most Wanted, releasing in March of 2014. While he was involved in writing for the first movie, Jason Segel wouldn't return for Most Wanted since he was busy filming for the cult classic children's movie, Sex Tape, but most of the staff behind the 2011 film would return for this one. I also saw this movie as a kid, but I honestly have zero memory of my experiences with it. And after watching it with semi-fresh eyes for this video, I think it's pretty decent. Instead of going for a standard plot like the 2011 film, this movie goes absolutely bonkers. The Muppets embark on a world tour with their new manager, Dominic Badgie, played by Ricky Gervais, who secretly turns out to be a bad guy? We find out that Kermit has a doppelganger named Constantine, who also happens to be the most dangerous frog in the world. Kermit and Constantine swap moles, leading to Kermit being sent to Russia, while Constantine imitates Kermit. As the tour continues, Constantine and Dominic steal items from local museums while the Muppets get everything they want and party with celebrities like
Come on, Diddy Daddy!
I can now see why this movie is called Muppets Most Wanted. Man, a lot of this movie is aged like milk. Anyway, Walter and Fozzie finally grow suspicious, and after they and Animal find out the truth, they all go to Russia to break Kermit out of prison. Constantine then proposes to Miss Piggy, and as the wedding is about to begin, Kermit and the others arrive to stop the ceremony, and have Constantine and the lemur arrested. Oh yeah, Dominic also calls himself the lemur for whatever reason. So yeah, quite the story here. While the story here does go a little all over the place, I honestly think it benefits it more than anything. You never really know where the characters will go next, and it was interesting to watch the cracks form as Constantine's charade went on. And also some bigger spoilers here. Seeing the Muppets treating Kermit like crap at the beginning and not even questioning when Constantine just gives everyone what they want, to them standing up for Kermit at the end of the film was a really well told story arc. The main narrative with Constantine and the Muppets was definitely the highlight here, but everything else about this movie was just kind of alright. The subplot with Kermit and the Gulag felt pretty one note, especially since everyone there already knew he wasn't Constantine, but decided to keep him there anyway. Tina Fey's character was a little fun, but once you hear her fake Russian accent for too long, it does get a little annoying. There was also another subplot with Sam the Eagle and an Interpol agent played by Ty Burrell, and while their segments were fun and had the best song in the entire movie, they didn't feel too integral to the plot. That all being said though, I still had a really fun time with this movie, and I think it almost lives up to the previous film. It's not as whimsical as Muppets 2011, but it's still a fun new direction that was pulled off pretty well. I once again recommend this movie if you haven't seen it already, but please avoid this section if you can. You'll thank me later. Muppets Most Wanted did decent in the box office and reviews, but came nowhere close to the heights of the previous film, and as of now, became the final Muppet movie released in theaters. But just over a year later, the Muppets would return with an all-new TV show called... oh, how original. The Muppets, or the ABC show as I'll be calling it, was a sitcom parody of everyone's favorite show to either overhate or overrate, The Office. The show took a lot of elements from The Office, such as shaky cameras and one-on-one interviews.
What an overused device. You tell the camera how you really feel, and then they cut back to you saying something completely different. I love those interviews.
But instead of focusing on a paper company, the ABC show had the Muppets producing a late-night show starring Miss Piggy, with Kermit as the producer, Fozzie as the opening comedian, and the team of Gonzo, Rizzo, and Pepe as the writers. You also had the Electric Mayhem as the show band, Sam the Eagle as a network censor, and Chip, the IT guy.
I'm Chip. I'm the IT guy. I'm Chip. I'm the IT guy.
This was the show that I was most excited to watch for this video. I'm not the biggest fan of The Office personally, but the entire concept of the show with the Muppets involved seemed like a really fun idea. And while the zaniness of the Muppets is a bit muted here compared to everything else I've talked about, I still enjoyed the show for the most part. Most of the show follows Kermit and Miss Piggy, who have broken up again, and focuses on how they work together despite their broken relationship. But you also have arcs like Fozzie's relationship with his girlfriend Becky, Gonzo, Rizzo, and Pepe moving in with each other, and Sam having the hots for Janice. The episodes all follow a pretty simple plot, with the Muppets dealing with everyday troubles while including celebrities throughout each story. Which brings me to my biggest problem with this show. While it is fun to see the Muppets in a more realistic setting, most of the show just feels like another Office. The Muppets are still their old selves at heart, but with the exception of Miss Piggy, most of the elements that let their personalities shine are either missing or severely diminished. They do occasionally emerge, like when Gonzo does one more stunt, but most characters just feel like ordinary people. And the producers seem to notice this too, as 10 episodes in, they changed showrunners to overhaul the show in hopes to revive viewership. But despite attempts to mend the show, ratings and viewership continued to plummet with every episode, leading to its cancellation after the first season. I can't say that I'm surprised it was cancelled, but for all that I've criticized about the show, I still find it charming in a lot of ways. Sure, the Muppets feel a little bland in the setting, but it was still interesting to watch them in a more realistic setting. The show's humor is often quite funny as well, and had several moments that tug at my heartstrings a bit. I do think it could have benefited from more Muppet madness, but for what the show is, I had a pretty fun time with it. The next Muppet project wouldn't come until March of 2018 with the revival of Muppet Babies. The show would bring the classic series into a 3D setting and would air for 3 seasons on Disney Junior. You really expect me to watch 3 seasons of a Disney Junior show? From what I've seen, the show looks fine for what it is, and it seemed to do well with its target audience and critics. The only real notable thing about this show is how as of now, it's the final Muppet show to air on TV. Interesting way to go. But in 2019, as Disney Plus was announced, we got news of a brand new Muppet show. Muppets Now, an unscripted variety show, was announced as a Disney Plus exclusive and would release in July of 2020. Oh no. Considering how the Muppets often utilized improv throughout their history, this sounded like a really fun idea for a show. Until you watch it. I'm sorry, but Muppets Now did next to nothing for me personally. The show goes through several different segments per episode, such as a lifestyle vlog with Miss Piggy, a cooking show with Swedish Chef hosted by an unnecessarily annoying turkey lady, and a hidden talent show hosted by Walter. The entire thing felt really basic to me with a lot of how do you do fellow kids energy and reminded me of the pandemic in the worst ways possible. And by that I mean it was probably cute to watch when it first came out, but watching it nowadays just makes me feel depressed. If you enjoy this show, more power to you, but it's just not for me. Oh, and I almost forgot. Muppets Now also introduced Joe the Legal Weasel, a brand new
How the Muppets are creating an incredible new show for Disney+.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Steve Whitmire, the puppeteer who had played Kermit since Jim Henson's passing, was fired by Disney in late 2016 and replaced by Matt Vogel. This came about after years of misconduct from Whitmire, including making outrageous demands due to his status and casting out any understudies for Kermit. The Henson family came out in favor of the firing, with Brian Henson even stating he wished he had recast Kermit before selling the Muppets to Disney. Steve Whitmire did a great job portraying Kermit throughout the years, but considering some of the claims he was fired for, I don't blame Disney for their decision. However, and no offense to Matt Vogel, but Kermit just feels really off with his portrayal. I know it's unrealistic to expect a perfect match from anyone, but Kermit sounds like he has an actual frog in his throat while speaking. His energy also feels lethargic compared to Whitmire and Henson, as if he's actually aged since the 1950s. Vogel's portrayal isn't awful by any means, but I do hope he does improve if the Muppets continue from here. We won't see much of Kermit from now on, but since this was the biggest change to happen to the Muppets so far, I pretty much had to mention it. Muppets Now would only release 6 episodes before getting cancelled, but the Muppet crew would stay busy over the next few years. Just a year later, we'd get Muppets Haunted Mansion, a Halloween special exclusive to Disney+. I don't have a ton to say about the special, as it's a pretty standard retelling of the actual Haunted Mansion ride. There's nothing really notable about it, but it is a fun watch for what it is. Around the same time, the Jim Henson Creature Shop created the Weirdos, a band of 4 Muppets that starred in the music video for Coldplay's song, Beautiful. Let's listen to it. What happened to you? Anyway, 2 years later in 2023, we get an all-new Disney Plus series called The Muppets Mayhem. The show follows Nora, a record label associate played by Lily Singh, as she tries to wrangle the Electric Mayhem to record an album and play at the Hollywood Bowl. You also have Moog, a Mayhem superfan played by Taj Mowry, and JJ, an executive played by Andrews Holm, who also happens to be Nora's extremely desperate ex-boyfriend. I'll be honest, I had my doubts coming into the show. The Mayhem weren't my favorite Muppets, and my only previous experience with Lily Singh was her late night show.
My hair is so long that sometimes it gets stuck in my butt crack.
But as I sat through the full season, I came to really appreciate almost everything about it. You learn about each member, their dynamics within the band, and get more of their personalities than you typically do. And while the rest of the Muppets aren't present, their chaotic energy is still felt within a mostly well-written story. Lily Singh also surprised me with how well she fit with the Mayhem and came across way better than Ashanti in The Wizard of Oz. Each episode also concluded with a new song or cover, so it felt like they were actually recording the album throughout the season. I had a pretty fun time watching this show, but if I'm being honest, this probably would have been better as a movie. This may just be a pet peeve of mine with these kinds of series, but several episodes had some sort of forced conflict that came out of nowhere. There were also a couple episodes that felt unnecessary to the plot and just felt like they were here to meet a 10-episode limit. Like, now Animal's gonna run away and become a hibachi chef. Now they're gonna film a Beatles-style documentary. Now they're gonna become influencers and play a virtual concert in Minecraft while also going to war with a bunch of Swifties. Yes, that's an actual episode of the show, and truth be told, it's probably my favorite beside the finale. But overall, I had a great time with Muppets Mayhem, and it's probably my favorite Disney project outside of the reboot movies. I may have some problems with the pacing of the series, but once it got to the end, I was pretty happy with how everything turned out. However, the main thing that the show has taught me is that Lily Singh is much better at being an actress than a talk show host.
What did the rock say to the flower? Okay, bloomer.
Okay, I have now watched every single Muppet show and movie that Disney has released. Except for Muppet Babies and that one French show that I forgot to mention, but I talked about all the stuff that matters. So now, simply in terms of the quality of the projects released by them, do I think Disney has treated the Muppets well? Mostly. These shows and movies obviously weren't going to have the same magic from the classics, but for what most of them were worth, I had a good time with them. The two reboot movies were both a great revitalization for the franchise. Muppets Mayhem was a surprisingly good time, and while I had some problems with the ABC show, it still brought out a lot of great moments. As for Muppets Wizard of Oz and Muppets Now, you can probably skip those two. I went into this era of the Muppets with fairly low expectations, but I'm glad that I ended up enjoying most of what I watched. But my question at the end of this is, where do the Muppets go from here? Adam Goldberg, one of the showrunners for Muppets Mayhem, expressed interest in creating a Muppets cinematic universe, and while I wouldn't mind getting a few more shows or even movies, I don't know if I'd want a full universe of them, and considering how each of the shows I talked about today were all cancelled after one season, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But no matter what, the Muppets are always going to mean a lot to me personally, and I hope whatever Disney does with them next continues to improve in quality. So thank you all for watching, I hope you all enjoyed, and I promise my next video won't take another 2 months to come out. I promise. Take care.
Letting the days go by, letting the water hold me down.